You may have heard about the idea to shorten the work week and give employees more days to themselves. But if you go back in history, it's not as radical as it seems. Since the COVID-19 pandemic hit more than 3 years ago, industries are rethinking work-life balance. And it's not just corporate America. CBS News Elaine Quijano explores how workers and their bosses are reaping the benefits of the 4-day work week.
What would you do with an extra day off each week? Elise McCabe kayaks and says her days now flow together in a more productive way.
Taxes or laundry or whatever, all of that stuff can go into a Friday so that on Monday, I'm just ready to roll.
As head of film at Kickstarter, McCabe credits her company's shorter work schedule for that sense of balance. John Leland is Kickstarter's chief strategy officer and head of sustainability.
During the pandemic, I think all of our notions of work got upended.
The Brooklyn-based online crowdfunding company went fully remote during the pandemic. Then, last April, officials shifted to a 4-day work week, 32 hours total.
We're giving people that 5th day off. We kept salaries the same, which we pay above market. We kept benefits the same. We're just giving people back time in their week to get better rest. So when they do come to work, they're just a lot more focused.
This is not a new concept. Nearly a century ago, Henry Ford ran the numbers and calculated people would be more productive working fewer hours. So he cut his employees' work week to 5 days, at a time when most manufacturing jobs required working 6. Now, decades later, companies like Kickstarter say they've seen their own positive results. Is this ultimately good for Kickstarter's bottom line?
Absolutely. So far, we are performing much better than we have historically. Employees are happier. We are a much stronger company at this point. And in fact, we're hiring, we're growing at a time when a lot of companies in our industry are laying people off.
Those benefits mirror the findings of the world's largest 4-day week pilot program to date. 61 companies in the UK, employing just under 3,000 workers, tried the concept for about 6 months, from June to December last year. The results? Organizations reported revenue increased an average of 35% compared to previous years. The number of staff leaving fell by 57%, and a whopping 92% of companies continued the 4-day work week beyond the trial period.
The minimum fee by the state?
Yeah. Here in the U.S., some local and state governments are also making the switch. Prospect Park, New Jersey, about 20 miles west of New York City, began its own pilot program last month. Employees still work 40 hours a week, but most get Fridays off, working 10-hour days Monday through Thursday. Mohammed Kairullah is the mayor.
Everybody seems to be happy. They're coming in. We're open every day till 6:30. Prospect Park is a blue-collar town, so people work shift hours. We're public servants, and we serve our residents. So no matter how we feel about it, it's the taxpayers are number one.
And employees are finding benefits in the new schedule, too.
So here, just make sure that the smoke detector gets put on.
Heidi Amaral is the town's code enforcement officer. As a mom, she wasn't sure at first how the new schedule would affect her childcare arrangements.
So this is your new mural in town.
Yes, it is.
But a few weeks in, she and her husband have adjusted, and she says she's seeing some advantages.
It's great. It gives me more time with my family on Friday. It gives me that extra day in case I just want to travel. So I think it's going to work out. It's going to be good.
As the 4-day week gains traction globally, some skeptics argue not all businesses are suited for a shortened work week. Some are concerned about cramming a full week's work into fewer days. Others are working longer hours daily to accommodate for the shorter time period. But Kickstarter's John Leland argues it's time for companies to rethink their metrics and calculate value beyond just hours spent working.
Business leaders have come to see themselves only as stewards of capital. Honestly, I think there's a responsibility, if you're running an organization, to balance civic duty with organizational interests. And in this case, it's a win-win for both.
Elise McCabe agrees, and she's mindful working reduced hours is a privilege.
What did your friends and family say when you told them you were doing a 4-day work week?
Oh, man. Where, are there any jobs? Are there any jobs going?
Any openings?
Any openings? There are a ton. So, but yeah, no, and envy.
Reframing the traditional work week as the corporate post-pandemic landscape evolves. Elaine Quijano, CBS News, New York.
And we'd like to bring in Juliet Schor. She's a professor of sociology at Boston College and sits on the academic board for 4-Day Week Global. Professor, let me ask you a philosophical question. Is a 4-day work week, is it a mindset as much as anything, which is to say, if you know Friday you've got off, you change the way you approach those 4 days mentally, and that's part of what happens when companies switch to 4-day work weeks?
Well, I think for sure that's part of it. But the other thing that's happening is that in these trials, the companies go through 2 months of figuring out what they're doing that isn't providing value, how they can change things as an organization to take stuff off the table, reduce the meetings, reduce distractions, et cetera, so that it makes it really feasible for people with that new mindset to get everything done in 4 days.
So they learn how to sort of cut the fat, so to speak, in the day to make the days more efficient. Is that realistic for jobs, say, in the medical field or in law enforcement to go down to 4 days a week?
I think you have highlighted two of the industries where it is probably most difficult. But what I would say in some of those fields is that those are already kind of burnout, high intensity jobs where in healthcare, for example, we're losing huge numbers of doctors, nurses, and other trained professionals because of the burnout culture. And there is some research that shows even if you have to hire new people for that 5th day, you're going to make a lot of that back in your ability to keep workers, lower healthcare costs, lower unemployment, and of course, massive social benefits for not training these people, very expensive training, and then they're leaving these fields.
What are the hurdles that companies come up against? In other words, if you show them these data and make the case for a 4-day work week, and it looks like it's going to help them with productivity and all of these other benefits, what are the hurdles that keep them from doing it?
Well, I think there are sort of 2 parts to that. In the United States, one has to do with just like an inertial culture, cultures of control, companies that feel they have to be watching workers. Think about the fact that we had the ability to do remote work for years before the pandemic, and almost nobody got the opportunity or the privilege to do it until the pandemic. And then lo and behold, actually it worked. Lots of employers did it. So I think there is just that kind of inertial dimension to it.
As you've looked and studied work and people's relationship with it, how has our relationship and the way in which we see our identity in our work, has that changed over time? And did the pandemic have anything to do with the way that has changed? And is that a part of this 4-day work week?
Well, I do think in the U.S. we have been a work-centric culture, although I should point out that the U.S. led the world in work time reduction from the late 19th century all the way, arguably until the 1970s, at which point we started to diverge from Europe. Our hours stopped falling, began to grow. European hours continued to fall. What the pandemic has done, I think, is make people realize that a work culture that burns people out or that really makes it impossible to have a good family life or good community relationships in your community, that's a problem. And more employers are understanding that. And I think that both workers and just ordinary folks who are out of the workplace also feel that. So the pandemic has kind of reset expectations about the place of work in our society, and I think really opened up possibilities for transforming work in ways that we've been talking about for decades, but that haven't really taken hold yet.
All right, Professor Juliet Schor, thank you for helping us do our work tonight.
My pleasure.
From better wages to more flexibility, the pandemic has changed what workers want. It has also changed what some employers are willing to give. Tomorrow, we'll look at the shifting trends of the employment in the United States.